Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I can see that we've got about 36 people, and it's almost a full house in terms of all of our acceptances. Today's live cast is going to go through and talk about the documentation that we provided to you. I'd like to talk about some of the reasoning behind the pricing, what to expect as part of this project, drill down into perhaps some of the questions around how it will work and what you will get out of it. I can't take any verbal questions. So with the live event process, it's a typed question. So if you use the question button, which should be at the top right of your screen, I'll see that coming up in my message panel on the right of my screen, and hopefully you're also seeing the content, and I've merged all of the documents into one so that we can skip through and make this as interactive as possible as you can in a verbal plus text-based chat. So let's hope that it can be as dynamic as possible, and that I'll make this an interactive event. I won't wait for the end to take questions. As you start having questions come through, we'll jump in. So looking at what we're going to cover today, let's quickly recap on the overview of what we'll be providing in terms of payer services and why we'll be providing them in the way we will for the mandated payment service. We'll just touch on what's in the services overview and the variation letter, and how we plan to take that forward, and any questions you've got. I've had a couple of questions that have come through by email yesterday and this morning, so I'll also make sure we touch on those, because we know that if a couple of you have had those questions, that definitely they'll be the ones that we'll prioritise this morning. And the other one that I would spend some more time on is the kickoff pack that you will have received as well, and that would be good to get any feedback that you've got on that. We'd like to be able to ensure that that becomes a fairly dynamic document that meets your needs to help you get your approvals and planning and project kickoff done over the next 4 to 6 weeks. So if we look at where the mandated payment service fits in with the way that NPP is playing out, is very much around enabling that capability of NPP to be embedded into software, embedded into third-party solutions, and address the full potential of real-time payments. Ultimately, as NPP MPS rolls out, and it will have a brand name, so we won't have to continue calling it MPS and try to explain to your customers and your members what a mandated payment is. It will be a named service that you'll be able to promote. So in the same way that OSCO is the real-time payments from your mobile banking apps, the brand name that unfortunately I'm under confidentiality and can't share that with you or even anyone in Cuscal at the moment. So that's the brand name that is still going through the registration and validation processes, but I can tell you it's something I think is quite good and addresses the positioning of this is a payment that is made with a customer's consent and authority to be made from their account to a third party that they've consented to have that payment made to. The solution leverages all of the make a payment capability that is built into the current NPP services, but what it does is create a layer that means that payments can be initiated outside the banking environment. So it's initiated by third parties. Now, some of those third parties may be banks. You may want to initiate payments on customers' accounts. And for those of you with growth strategies, I would encourage you to want to initiate payments to have the first deposit, or have savings plans to have payments that are automatically pushed into your accounts. But primarily, the use case for the payment initiation, the current direct debit user base, and payment platforms, potentially even payroll solutions that would then mean that businesses large and small could have payments initiated directly from their payroll system that would then come into your customer's account, rather than having to do the download and then upload of direct entry files. So that's why the focus is on the compliance around that any account that is able to make an NPP payment has to also be able to make an NPP payment that is initiated by a mandate, as opposed to initiated by a pay anyone or an OSCO instruction from your mobile app. And in fact, this is a time when we'll start to use, and you will have seen this hopefully in the product description, because I know you will have all been gone, oh wow, this is fantastic, I'm going to read this on the weekend, or you read it last week when we sent the email out, that the customer-friendly name for mandates is payment authorities. So these payment authorities that get set up are what are the heart of the being able to manage your customer's ability to provide consent for that third party to initiate the payment. So you can see that there are these processes for supporting that interaction. The other key issue is that with learnings from the last 3 years of NPP, and looking at the fact that this is an ecosystem play, that the requirements for compliance have been made much more stringent. And not only is there a requirement for compliance, which comes with the mandatory compliance regulation, which means there are non-compliance charges that get leveraged against participants who are not live with the solution in step with others. That they're also, if there is a compliance breach, the participant has indemnified the rest of the participants. So therefore, if a participant suffers loss due to a breach of the regulations, there is an indemnity for that loss. So we've taken the position that we need to protect you as well as protect us from those types of scenarios, and therefore we've built more of the payment orchestration and the mandate validation and authorization into the Cuscal NPP solution. So it means that the solutions that you integrate over on your side of the transaction, so that orange section with your internet or mobile banking or your core banking system, become instructions as opposed to payment orchestrations. It means that the work that you would do within your core or within your digital banking channels becomes a lot less than what you do for the systems now that you have in place for PayID. I have had one question about putting the slides into presentation mode. This is the only real slide that I'm using. The rest of it will be documents, and we'll be jumping around a bit. So you've actually got this slide in your distribution pack. Hopefully we can make this as interactive as possible, and this is a conversation starter. So let's move into the documents and the way that the solution has been positioned, and the way that we're looking to contract with you for this service. So we provided you with the services overview, which talks about all of the features of the service, looks in the detail of what the solution that will be providing to you are, and it highlights the functionality that Cuscal will build to enhance the existing payment services that we provide for NPP. So while the solution for payment initiators is a lot of new functionality, primarily all of the payment capability for MPS is modification of the existing payment capability, and then you've got the mandates or the payment authorities that have new capability as well. So you've got three areas of focus, two new, one mandatory being the ability to authorize the mandates or the payment authorities, and the other being behind the scenes with changes that Cuscal makes to the way that we manage payments now that the mandates are linked to them. We will be enhancing the Vigil services for supporting both the payment initiation as well as the mandate authorization, and we'll follow with the details of those enhancements within the next 4 to 6 weeks. We didn't want to hold off giving you the details of the core payment solutions where you have to integrate any longer, and we'll follow up with details of how Vigil will be updated before the end of the year, and that will be a development that we will do in parallel with the upgrades to the payment services, so that your Vigil services will also support this capability. The services and the costs are based on an implementation fee, which is over 4 installments, but that's we're keeping that relatively low compared to some of the implementation fees that we had in the first round. Where the majority of the cost comes in is in a compliance uplift to the service fees. So your current monthly service fees cover access to the core NPP payment engine, the core capabilities of dispute management, the orchestration of the investigations, and access to all of the APIs and services. So it's all of those services that are being upgraded to enable NPP payments to be made based on mandates, but also the addition of the new services, which are to provide, similar to the way we currently have APIs, back-end processing and investigation capabilities, to have mandates added to all of those. So that's the reasoning behind that for the next 12 months, so throughout 2021, that service fee will be increased to take account for the larger investment that Cuscal is required to make to enable compliance. And we have tied that to your monthly service fees so that it's capped at the amount of the fees you pay to us in FY21 and FY22. So it's capturing those fees, but because we're spreading it out over a 12-month period, that's where the timing comes from. So we'll charge that from the time we start the core development to the time that we complete and go live over that 12 months. Then once we're live, we're going to return your service fee to the current levels. We think that there'll be a ramp-up period where until we have payment initiators that are live and starting to migrate their direct debits or adding their new payments, the volumes will be quite low. It will take it, like we saw with NPP payments, that first 6 months will be a significant period of ramp-up. So we'll cover that and bring it back to the current levels, and then after 6 months we will bring in the permanent increase for those service fees, which recognise the additional capability that is now being managed, delivered, and kept up to date and kept incrementally compliant with the incremental changes that will continue to come through as tweaks and opportunities for different use cases of MPS come in. The new fees will be based on the mandate management, and while there is a lot of new payment messaging that is associated with receiving the payment initiation, we'll be not charging for that service because we've got we'll treat that as part of the payment message. So while we'll count those transactions, because clearly not every NPP payment will be based on a payment initiation, you'll still have the payments that you initiate from your mobile apps or your internet banking, but now you'll also have payments that are initiated by these third-party services that then are being managed in the back end as opposed to the front end. Hence why we're keeping that as a separate count, and you can track the number of your NPP payments that are then based on a payment initiation. Like we do for Pay ID and account maintenance, there will be a 5 cent charge for each time one of your customers sets up a new mandate. Those mandates are portable, manageable, just like a Pay ID. So at the moment, your customers have one Pay ID attached to their account. Over time, they'll have many mandate IDs or payment authorities, as well as Pay IDs that they link and can port either from or to your financial institution. I'm going to pause there because I know this would be an area where there would be a number of questions, and I'll go to one of the questions that we've received earlier. So the payer services for the NPS, the payments from MPS will be treated the same as existing payments. So yes, so if a payment is made based on a payment initiation as opposed to based on your customer logging into onto your app, that payment will charge the same. So if you're paying, say 10 cents a transaction now for one payment that you initiate and send to us, you'll pay 10 cents for a payment that a direct debit service provider sends the instruction to us, and we send the instruction to you to make that payment. So we're following that same pattern. As I said, we're not going to charge you an additional fee for handling the receipt of that payment initiation message. That will be factored into our overall run cost. Hopefully, the other question was around the temporary increase to cover the cost of compliance. So the actions and processes that are delivered in that. So a lot of that is around the fact that compliance we normally do in the background changes our core systems, changes our processes and messages, requires the additional build. So this is not the service fees you pay are not just for a specific service; they're actually also for maintaining the core systems. So hopefully that is addressed there. The compliance requirement, just to recap on that, around those the accounts that MPS must be made available to. So the easiest way to think about that is any of your accounts that one of your customers or members can log into your app now and make a payment from are the accounts that you need to make a payment, make MPS available to. So if you're not making payments from loan accounts now, which I would imagine you're probably not making payments from your home loans unless it's actually off the offset account, then you wouldn't have to have MPS payments available to be made from one of those loan accounts, term deposit accounts, other accounts that you have that you don't make payments available to now are restricted. NPPA is not defining what those accounts are. It's based on what you make available. You then are required to extend that to the initiation off your platform to others. Now, got another question around, are there alternatives to the way that the payment can be structured so that you could look at a balance sheet amortization? Yes, let's talk about that. Happy to look into that. It does need to be structured that it's a compliance type must pay cost as opposed to a project delivery. So in the same way that your auditors would be looking at the way that you account for your costs, our auditors are as well. So the Cuscal project cost will be in the vicinity of $10 million. We've got some fairly significant audit requirements on how we account for looking at any cost recoveries that we make towards that project. But very happy to, if you've got some specific financial engineering practices that you like doing in your bank or credit union, please shoot that through to me directly or via your account manager so that we could look at how we can find ways to accommodate some of your specific requirements. So there's a lot of activity over the next month leading up to that really detailed project planning and formal project initiation in November. So one of the objectives that we've got is that we need to start from November reporting on each identified institution's plans and readiness to be go live for the 3rd of December 2021. So that date is going to be burned into the goals and objectives for Cuscal project team here. So 3/12/21 is the target date. We think that there is an achievable timeline. Again, as I said, we will be doing as much of the heavy lifting within the Cuscal system to ensure that we help you to de-risk both your implementation cost on your side in your channels and your core, as well as the timing and the effort. We'll be learning a lot of things that we did from the original project of how we engage, looking at both the business readiness as well as the technical readiness to support you in that exercise. I think that that might be a good time to think about then the project team that we'll be standing up. We'll have our product and project team running and being available to you like we did in phase 1. We will be using a lot of digital channels and solutions that I guess have evolved over the last few years, and leveraging much of the way that now organisations communicate through a lot more remote learning. I'll be looking at digital chat, messaging, both and chat boards, as well as a lot more webinars and recorded messaging that you can then use internally. And you'll recognise many of these features from the first phase of when we launched NPP that we'll be using again to help you get up and running. we'll come back with a more of a workshop format. So rather than this one-way live event, it would be a large teams meeting, or a number of workshops, depending on the size of the audience. We perhaps might break them into people that use specific service providers, so that you can have a detailed discussion about your specific solutions, like we did a lot in the original payments launch, and that will be our November activity. So we're looking to have your variation letter signed and returned by the end of November, because the terms and conditions changes take effect as of the 1st of December. So in that variation, as I said before, this is a enhancement, a significant enhancement. It's much. It's not just a compliance sort of feature or sort of small messaging enhancement. It's a whole new set of functions that build out from the make a payment service proposition. So that's a variation to those services. There's a whole lot of new terms, defined terms that are introduced. We'll look at then those service fees, as I've explained before, that come in as that compliance uplift, and then drop back to current, and then have a increment to have the ongoing. Like you've got now in your services agreement, there are service schedules that outline the services available. That we can see from in the make a payment schedule, there is recognition of the NPPA obligation that identified institutions and participants that make payments must then also be able to make payments that are initiated based on mandates. The description of the services that we are building, and therefore the services that will be delivered under the compliance program, are listed in this schedule, and for most of you that would be Schedule 5A. I think a few of you might have a slightly different numbering in your services agreement, but 90% of you would have a new Schedule 5A. And then for the delivery of the project, again, to keep the execution simple, for not have to have so many contracts and services signed, we've incorporated rather than a separate SOW, we've incorporated that now into the NPP services agreement. So the new schedule, again, for most of you, that would be Schedule 23. Which defines the services that we will deliver, and then the details of the SOW that will be delivered under that, which includes our commitment on the delivery of the functional uplift, and doing that in parallel with your implementation. We've now moved on to having a lot of API-based and managed services. So for those of you that have implemented Apple Pay and digital card provisioning, you'll see that there's a lot. It's more of a messaging notification. So those APIs are available will be through our developer hub. That don't think many of you on the call today will have used the developer hub before. So we'll be ensuring before the next webinar we'll focus on that access for how your tech teams or your service providers are able to use the developer hub to access the APIs, get all the version control, get the access to the services, but even more importantly, access to do their own testing and verification. the solutions that have and the clients that have recently come on to be able to receive payments, and some of the payment service providers that are receiving payments on NPP now have used the APIs and the test environments to do their own testing for that, and the feedback has been very, very positive compared to the more traditional integrations that we did with the core payments, where your service provider had to build a lot of the message handling and orchestration. Under MPS, we'll handle all of that orchestration. You can do some simple messaging to us. That's the document walkthrough, the key points, and some of the perhaps nuances of reasoning behind the questions. So we've just had a few more questions come through. Can a debtor authorise a single payment arrangement that does not specify a specific frequency of payment? For example, can it cover ad hoc payments based on the debtor's actions using a mobile app? Yes, absolutely. And in fact, I think this is going to be one of the biggest use cases. I think that this, what's called contextual commerce, where I guess the Uberization of payment and commerce experiences, where someone registers their payment details in an app, and then when they take action, payments are initiated. If they've got that trusted environment, they trust the relationship they've got with the app provider, they have got that the services are being delivered and there's a whole dispute process, it does make you wonder how much of the value of a chargeback and some of the other services that happen with cards can happen. So many of those providers are looking for the ability to have payments paid directly from accounts. You've seen for many years that PayPal has enabled a direct debit to be a funding source for a PayPal-based payment. So I think that those non-specific payment arrangements will be very popular. It also means, though, this is one of the things that we'll be validating as part of our Vigil service, is setting up these payment arrangements, is looking at who the payment arrangements are to, and that the parameters and profiles will be leveraging a lot of the AI and machine learning of Vigil to check the risk of customer accepting and signing up for these. The Vigil will check both the establishment of the arrangement, as well as while we are able to rely on the integrity of the participant that sponsors that payment initiator, we'll also be monitoring, like we do with your card payments, the incoming payment initiations. Another question, assuming there will be work that has to be done within individual apps in internet banking, has Cuscal commenced discussion with ADI IDPC? So I think, would that be independent developers? So those IDPCs can also price that work for their customers. So we have had initial briefings. We've given the roadmaps, and the details of the APIs will start to be exposed, ready for the webinar that we have in next Tuesday. So that has now started very rapidly to progress, and they will have access, those developers will have access to the first APIs, and they've had access to the details of the customer experience requirements for some months. So we would hope that their ability to validate, cost up, and confirm their implementation approach should be a relatively, compared to previous and other solutions, relatively straightforward. Got one question, I guess, leading on to that there wouldn't be any cost or involvement from your current service provider, being that either a core banking system or a digital banking provider. No, that wouldn't be the case. There will be things that they will need to do, but what they won't need to do is actually build the whole payment process or the whole payment authority, consent and authorization process like that they did have to do in phase one. So what we'll require from your channel provider or your core banking provider, depending on their architecture of how they deliver it, is the ability to send you an authorization request, and that you can respond back to us whether that authorization request will be granted. So that would probably take using the current authorizations that you use in your mobile apps to be applied to API-based requests rather than just the requests that come out of the out of your own apps. The other question is the plan to move all Cuscal APIs into the one hub? When can we start viewing them there? Well, in fact, once you've got access to, we've had a soft launch of the API developer hub now with our new clients, and this really is now the full launch of that. So all of our current payments are all exposed and ready to be used in the developer hub. We won't be deprecating the existing SOAP-based messaging that you've used for payments. They will continue to be supported. But if you want to do new services, if you want to integrate into new environments, you'll now also have access to RESTful APIs. So if you wanted to refresh your implementation as part of MPS, that is something you may consider. That might, I guess, put a lot of effort and work into your own project. We would suggest that they are potentially separate projects that you would then look at your technology refresh, or alternatively, if you're integrating into a new app, you could probably use the RESTful solutions if you're integrating into a new banking system provider. So what we'll do when we have the developer web event next Tuesday is we'll make sure that we also highlight how to use the payment APIs and the Pay ID APIs, not just the MPS APIs. Good. Are there any other questions? Now, don't feel that you can't reach and ask specific questions offline as well. So on the email that went out with the documentation, reply back to that email. It would be great to have those questions that are included in the NPP product team's email, so we can start to track those and build up FAQs if they're questions that are relevant and would help others. And as I said, we're going to use some channels to make sure that these types of questions are easy to answer, and you can leverage off other people's questions. But also, if you've got any commercial questions that either I or your account manager can pick up specifically and confidentially, yes, send those through as well. So if there are no more questions, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I'm sorry that the detail of the slides was not clear, but what I just reiterate, there's nothing there that was not shared with you, and it was more a case of helping to orient what's in the documents that you've got. If you do have questions about any of the content, again, please feel free to send those through, and we'll be monitoring those emails and getting back to you as soon as we can. I think at the moment, because we would assume a number of questions would come through, I think we will probably have to keep with a 48-hour SLA on responses, but we'll get back to you as quickly as we can over the next week so that you can have as much information as you need. Again, if you've got elements that you think need to be added to the FAQs in that kickoff pack to help you internally, please send those through, and what we'll do is publish a version that can be updated. We might put that through a Teams sharing site that you can download updates quite easily. Thank you very much, everybody, and enjoy your afternoon.